Today is the day of days, what Donald Trump calls Liberation Day, and many people are now eagerly watching what Donald Trump is doing. We are looking at what his latest statements on tariffs were. What can be expected today? There were some clips released here that give us hints about what is coming our way. In the best case, the uncertainty will be removed from the market again. In the worst case, Donald Trump might drop a few bombs that bring even more uncertainty to the market. That would be really, really bad, because a lot of capital is waiting on the sidelines. And it's just waiting for more security, more confidence, and more clarity. And if this clarity could come from Donald Trump, then it could really be the turning point towards an upward movement in the capital markets. Donald Trump's big plan is still to unsettle the capital markets so that Jerome Powell lowers the interest rates. But Jerome Powell has already given the first signs that he is scaling back QT and so on. That means everything is already moving in the right direction. Now we're going to watch the clips of what Donald Trump has to say. But first, we already have the initial impacts here. For example, Israel has now removed all tariffs on all American products. These are already the first consequences. And if Israel does this, then Donald Trump's counteraction won't be as strong. The EU, they are very much against it. Just yesterday, I saw something from von der Leyen that she was talking to some politician. She sharply criticized someone who argued slightly pro-Trump and was still somewhat open for tariffs and such, and basically just wanted a bit of negotiation. Then von der Leyen strictly said, "Hey, what are you thinking?" And basically gave him a hard time, saying, yes, we have to be very strict with Donald Trump and so on, and we can't just open up here and negotiate with them or deal with them and so on. But that could really, really affect countries that are not open to negotiations here. Donald Trump is also involved in this whole issue here. He has a very strong negotiating leverage. That means often Donald Trump imposes very, very high tariffs, saying here, we are implementing retaliatory tariffs, we are imposing mutual tariffs. But simply to put oneself in a good negotiating position, it might be that a deal is made later, and then the mutual tariffs aren't that high. Then they meet somewhere in the middle or something along those lines. In any case, let's take a look at what might be revealed here, what we might potentially expect.
We are going to be very nice by comparison to what they were. The numbers will be lower than what they've been charging us, and in some cases maybe substantially lower.
There were just 2 high tariffs, and before Biden, there was also Donald Trump. But that means Donald Trump, he would have overdone it here. He would have just shipped money around the world. He would have distributed money everywhere. But now there's an America First policy again. That means you have to make sure that your own economy gets up and running first, that it really works here. And when that works, then you can, let's say, help other people or something like that again. But if you're not on healthy footing yourself, then it just doesn't work. And the tariffs, I know some people hate them. Some people say, okay, that's good. There are very, very different opinions on that. Some people are pretty pissed off because Donald Trump doesn't really favor the stock markets. He says he doesn't give a damn about the stock markets. He's concerned about the working class. He's concerned about other things. He's focused on getting the country back on track. And yes, that pisses off a lot of investors. I understand. And it doesn't just piss off investors in America, but also investors here in Europe. I know a few of them. It pisses some of you off because when the stock markets go down here, when the financial markets go down, when there's uncertainty, when we're in a risk-off sentiment, then the Bitcoin price doesn't drop that much here. And I know a lot of people here are very, very focused on the Bitcoin price. But you shouldn't let yourself be unsettled by this. These are just short-term setbacks that we're seeing here. That doesn't mean it will continue like this for decades. Let it go on for a few more weeks. Maybe the scare has already ended today, but that doesn't mean Bitcoin will just be volatile all the time until the end of the year. It's not endlessly dependent on Donald Trump. This isn't directly a slip from Donald Trump, but here the White House is being asked about tariffs. And these are very, very interesting answers here.
And has the global stock market sell-off caused the White House to rethink any of these plans?
The president has always said that the stock market is a snapshot of a moment in time, and he's doing what's best for Main Street, and Wall Street will work out just fine in this administration, just like they did in their first term.
So the question is asked here, hey, has Donald Trump perhaps reconsidered with the tariffs and so on because he saw that the stock markets have broken down here? And maybe it's due to the tariffs here, or not just maybe, it's very, very likely. This has largely been caused by the tariffs. Has Donald Trump perhaps changed his policy here? Does he maybe want to change something here after all? And then he simply says here, the White House spokesperson says, no, the stock markets aren't that important to him here. He doesn't really focus on them. He said that from the beginning. He's concerned with the transformation of the country here. And yes, that's a very, very bad piece of news if, for example, you're old and have your stock-based retirement or something like that, and then the stock markets correct by 20-30% or so. I mean, as a long-term holder, that's not a problem. You can weather the stock declines. And as a Bitcoin holder, that shouldn't be a problem anyway, because as a Bitcoin holder, you should definitely know that declines, volatility, and so on are always part of it, and you shouldn't invest money in Bitcoin that you might need in the next 3, 4 or 5 years or something like that, but only invest money that you won't need for 4 or 5 years. Because if the Bitcoin market should go down, if it becomes volatile and so on, you won't have liquidity problems, because you can simply ride out the crashes. What's a bit different this time is because that was during Donald Trump's last term in office, so that he was was very focused on the stock markets. Now, it seems he is not as focused on the stock markets anymore. However, others say that he is still watching the stock markets, but now he is looking at them in the long term. That means he really doesn't care about the short-term happenings. He's only concerned with how things are in the long term. And you also have to consider that if Donald Trump makes cuts and drastic changes to the economy, he has to do it now, because if he does it later, then it will happen. Eventually, the recession or maybe some crisis or a stock market crash or something like that happens, then right before the next elections, and then it's way too late. Because then he also has the problem of being seen as a bad president, or an unpopular president, or something like that as he leaves office and so on. And that's why Donald Trump wants to do this as quickly as possible. Painful things at the beginning and then the nice things come at the end. At least that's the idea here. Whether it will really work out that way, we'll see. Some say he's overdoing it. Some say what he's doing is good. Feel free to write in the comments what you think about it.
Economic experts in international trade say that it's highly unusual for an announcement to be coming in 1 or 2 days and not to have any details about which countries are impacted and how much each country will face when it comes to tariffs. And President Trump took several questions about this last night in the Oval Office, and he did not reveal any of that information, even though, of course, reporters pressed him over and over. What he did say was that if you charge us, we're going to charge you. And he said the word reciprocal is very important. But then he went on to say that the U.S. is going to be, quote, a lot nicer than those countries.
So, this might be the most exciting clip here, because the reporter clearly says that Donald Trump is being asked, hey, what's going on? What's the deal with the tariffs? Why not release some information? And she also says it's very, very unusual to have so little information. Normally, when there are such big announcements, you at least have some tendencies. For example, okay, it will, for example, affect Europe, or it will affect this or that country. It will affect Canada, Mexico, or something like that. But you just don't know what the situation will be afterward. You just know that there will be reciprocal tariffs. That means anyone who imposes tariffs on the USA will also receive reciprocal tariffs. So, they will get a retaliatory tariff or something like that. Of course, Donald Trump said, we will be nicer here. So if, for example, Germany or Europe imposes a tariff on the USA, it might be that the USA imposes a tariff that's 5% less or something like that. But we don't know which countries are involved. What's still happening here? I mean, Donald Trump even once announced that tariffs of up to 100% could be on the table if any nations don't trade in US dollars. That would be quite something if such shocking stories were to happen. For example, imposing massive sanctions on certain countries, saying, okay, Russia, they're not dealing enough in dollars, or China, they're not dealing enough in dollars, or something like that. That's not necessarily what investors expect. But that would be, for example, a scenario that could be quite shocking here. Donald Trump will stop. Perhaps with this tactic of not revealing anything to the outside, of not giving out any information, he might already be trying to trigger more uncertainty in the market. He has already managed to increase the interest rate probabilities. Or rather, the probabilities of interest rate cuts have increased, not much, but the probabilities have increased somewhat that interest rates will be lowered. That's ultimately what Donald Trump wants here. He might not even be so concerned with generating massive revenue through tariffs, or something like that. Some people say, for example, that you could generate revenue with tariffs to buy more Bitcoin. Look, let me show you something. Yeah, check this out, because here comes my cat. Ultra bullish Bitcoin cat. Come on. Whoa, crazy. Did you see that? She turned off the power switch. What the heck? Let's see if she makes another move. Whoa, she just knocked this thing over. Check this out. She just knocked it over. Crazy cat, what's going on with you? This actually belongs here. Here's the light switch. And she just took the thing away from here. Now the thing is back on. Crazy. What is the Bitcoin price prediction? 200,000 for this year. Really? 200,000, she says. Already ultra bullish here in the city. I really scoured the entire internet to see if there are any insider information or any leaks. Usually, something always leaks out before such an announcement comes. Then someone has special information, or at least there are rumors or something like that. But there's really nothing. No idea. Have you found anything or something? I definitely didn't find anything. It's definitely very, very mysterious. Very, very strange. Even here, as the reporter says, you can catch us off guard. But you can also be right later. It's just kind of a nothing burger. Then nothing happens at all. Donald Trump doesn't do anything big. And everyone here got all panicked. And later, nothing big happens here.
Also set to go into effect tomorrow, 25% auto tariffs that could increase the price of a new car by $5,000 to $10,000. On that note, CBS News senior White House reporter Jennifer Jacobs, he's tracking all.
And this could raise car prices in the USA by $5,000 to $10,000 per car in some cases. This is a massive impact on the population. And then the question is, how long will people put up with it? Donald Trump sometimes says, okay, the tariffs won't be inflationary, but it's quite clear that they are inflationary. I mean, if there's an auto tariff of say 5, 15, 20%, or whatever the amount may be, and then, in some cases, the cars cost 5,000 euros, 10,000 euros, or so, and even if it's only 5% or something like that in the end, I mean, if you make a big purchase here, like a car or something, it immediately amounts to a few thousand euros. And that's just crazy. And the USA already has certain inflation problems. Now the tariffs are being added on top. Sure, many people are saying now that it's not such a big problem, because it will relatively quickly balance out again. That means yes, although now, there are certain inflationary tendencies, but they will flatten out relatively quickly because more money will come into the country again. This allows the infrastructure to be upgraded again. This allows the economy here to be boosted again. Tariffs are always a type of tax. Tariffs are still a form of economic intervention. I'm a supporter of the Austrian school. That means we don't do much intervention here. We just let the economy run its course. We put the capital in private hands. We don't do any kind of centralized state interventions. We don't think we're God, knowing exactly how everything works here. But of course, I also understand that one is in a predicament here, because if the USA simply says free markets and so on, but all other countries impose tariffs on US goods, then one is also in a very, very difficult position. That's always the problem. How do you transition from a socialist system to a free system? From a fiat money system to a Bitcoin system? That means the transition is always partly not so easy at all. I don't want to say that Donald Trump wants to completely switch to the Bitcoin standard, but in any case, this is a difficult situation that the USA also finds itself in. Therefore, to a certain extent, it can be understood, even though, as I said, I'm not a fan of it. So guys, if you still want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link below for you. 21 Bitcoin, where you can buy Bitcoin easily, safely, and simply. Here, with the code, you can save up to 20% on fees when buying Bitcoin. Guys, see you. Until then, peace out.